Hello and welcome back everybody to Engines of VIA. Today we will take an in-depth look at VIA Rail's General Electric P42DCs and the history behind the locomotive. Now in the last video I said leave your suggestions down in the comments below for what I should do next. Leave a comment down below on what I should do next. I was planning on doing the General Electric P42DC next. Well, you see, I'm writing this a few hours after I finish editing the FPA4 video. But I will take your suggestions and use them for the next video that I do. Anyway, now we will get into the history of the P42DC. You can't talk about the P42DC without starting with the P40DC. The P40DC is the first of the GE Genesis passenger locomotive series. The P40DCs were built for Amtrak in 1993. The P40DC weighed 268,240 pounds. They have a GE 7F DL16F V16 4-stroke diesel engine, giving off 4,250 horsepower. The engines are capable of 166 kilometers an hour and reach that speed on Amtrak routes. The P40DC and the P42DC are very much alike. They both weigh the same, they both output the same amount of horsepower. However, the P42DC is actually capable of going 177 kilometers an hour instead of the 166 kilometers an hour the P40DCs can reach. The engine was designed to replace Amtrak's F40PH fleet. The locomotive proved its worth to Amtrak, and the P42DC started to kick the great F40PH off the rails. But VIA Rail is the reason Amtrak rostered F40PHs up until 2001. In 1995, when Amtrak ordered their P42DC fleet, VIA was still using LRCs, F40PHs, and FP9Us. When it came to the Amtrak International, the VIA crew wanted to use the F40s on it until they could find a replacement locomotive. Since VIA engines could not be used in the USA, Amtrak kept using the F40PHs on the Maple Leaf up until VIA Rail received its order of P42DCs in 2001. In the case of VIA Rail's P42DCs, they were slightly modified. VIA's P42DCs were modified so the top speed was only 166 kilometers an hour instead of the 177 kilometers an hour Amtrak operates their P42DCs at. The biggest differences between the VIA P42DCs and the Amtrak P42DCs are the schemes. You should have guessed that, it's kind of obvious. But for real, the biggest differences between the locomotives is the VIA P42DC fleet does not have Sanders. They also have the addition of the third high-intensity discharge headlight. This extra light is below the front number board and right above the normal headlight. VIA Rail's P42DCs were the first engines ordered with the Renaissance scheme to match the relatively new at the time Renaissance coach fleet. The engines were ordered in a blue scheme at first, but in 2009 P42DC number 902 caught fire and was sent off for repairs and a repaint. But the engine did not come back in the usual blue scheme. The engine returned in a Turkish green. A portion of the P42DCs still wear the original blue paint scheme. However, with the recent P42 Canada 150th revs, this might mean a complete repaint of VIA's P42DC fleet. But when it comes down to personal opinion, Renaissance does not look good on any of the locomotives to me. Let me know what you think of Renaissance down in the comments. Anyway, although the VIA P42DCs stole the fame from the LRC coaches are still in full-on service in the Windsor-Quebec corridor. VIA Rail's P42DC fleet was finished within 1 month. VIA got all 20 engines 900 to 920 at the same time. They were all built and finished in October of 2001. The P42DCs, when delivered, literally just took the jobs from the LRCs, and the LRCs were sidelined. But for good reason. Like the FPA4, the LRC was more eco-friendly and much more fuel efficient than the FPA4 was. The P42DC was a giant step when it came to greenhouse gases and fuel consumption. The LRC was a fuel guzzler, since the engine and the HEP, head-end power, were controlled by the prime mover. The P42DC's HEP alternator is also built into the engine, but in a way that the engine and the alternator get a more equal amount of fuel. The F40PHs completely separated the HEP alternator from the engine, which proved extremely successful. That's really all for this episode of Engines of Via. I am sorry if it did not seem like much. It is surprisingly hard to find interesting facts on the Via P42DC. That is why I chose to do it second, because I knew it would probably be hard to do. I'm sorry if I disappointed anyone out there with this video, but we always have next week's. Anyway, please comment below on what engine you would like to see next week. Thank you for watching the second episode of Engines of Via. See you all next week. So this is my third time editing this, and I'm not even reading off of a script anymore, but I just wanted to add this little part in for a YouTuber. It's his birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, the Ontario Transit fan.